Know where you're going and know where you're at with the Onyx Maps Hunt app. If you're getting ready for the backcountry and for any of your hunting trips, mapping is an important tool. The Onyx Hunts map supports the Hunt Harvest Health podcast and is a great resource to help you learn your areas, units, and so much more. By using the promo code HHH20, all small H's, HHH20, you will get 20% off a new account. This means if you sign up for the new Elite membership, which is the 1-year plan and that has the best mapping data for all 50 states, you're going to save $20 on that membership. You can find more, including this promo code, at huntharvesthealth.com/onxmaps. So today's podcast is Ryan and I talking about his recent spring bear hunt here in Washington State. It's a little slow at first because when we recorded this, it was sort of late for us and we had kids running around and everybody was kind of fatigued. Ryan's been doing a lot of work, like we've said recently, and so getting him to sit down and do a podcast has been a bit of a challenge. But I think you'll hear that his love for bears, and he hasn't. I haven't known him to actually have a spring bear tag, so he's usually hunting for fall bears, and which is a very, I think, different experience for him because those bears are feeding on berries, etc. It's just a different climate that time of year. And so he drew a spring bear tag this year and was really excited. It took him a couple tries of, going in between work to get it done. But as usual, he got it done. And you can check out more about, like on Instagram, of course, at StHealthyHunter.com. And then on our website with these show notes, that'll be huntharvesthealth.com/podcast/springbear. All right, folks, welcome back to the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. I'm Doc Hillary, and Ryan's here.
I am.
Barely. We're doing this podcast at
I'm
about
a little sleepy.
Almost 10 o'clock at night, and our two kids are still not put to bed, so we'll see how far we get.
Yeah, and it's not like 10 o'clock is really late, but
it is to us.
It feels pretty late.
Well, it's not late for you normally, but when you have to get up for work at 3 or 4, it's pretty late.
Yeah.
We're not really walking our talk here about getting enough recovery sleep. This time of year, it's a busy year.
I'm still recovering a little bit from my bear hunt, so yeah. I'm still dragging, still trying to catch up, but
yeah. And that's, I think, what we're going to talk about on today's podcast is bears. Yeah?
Yeah, let's do it. Talk about bears. I get a lot of folks asking about bears, not just spring bear, but here in Washington, it seems like a lot more questions about fall bears because unlike a lot of states here, like in the West, I think Idaho, Montana, there's Oregon's got a lot of over-the-counter stuff for spring bear, but here in Washington, you have to draw a tag, and it's not that easy to draw. I haven't drawn in 5-6 years. It's not the easiest tag to get here. Whereas in the fall, they let you have 2 bear tags, and it's wide open.
Why is that?
It's a good question. I would love to lobby Fish and Wildlife here in Washington to change that because we've got a lot of bears, and the springtime is just a fun time to be out there. We're not allowed to use hounds here anymore, and we're not allowed to bait here anymore. And we don't have much of a spring season. They give out some tags, but very limited. For the amount of bears that we have, it's, I don't know, amongst all my group of guys, we're always trying to figure that one out. Like, why don't they open it up more for spring bear? Because, no shortage of bears here, and especially on the west side of the state. They're everywhere.
Do you think it has something to do, and I'm just literally making this stuff up, could it be that they think bears need to like get out of hibernation and have some time out there, or they're confused maybe, so it's
No,
easier to
I
get
don't think
them,
that's it.
or are they having cubs right now? Are mama's having cubs right now, or is that
No, they have the cubs in the den. They come out and they've got cubs. But no, I don't think there's anything. I don't know. I have no idea, really, to be honest. I
hmm,
can't think of a reasoning why, unless we were limited on how many bears we had. But we've got a lot of great country, and it's here on the west side of the state. It'd be really hard still to get out and find yourself a bear, but we do have a lot of them. It'd be more walking logging roads and finding grass, and that green stuff that greens up along the logging roads around here is usually where you find them in the spring. Whereas on the eastern side of the mountains, it's they're down in the same thing. They're looking for salad, they're looking for onions, looking for feed, and it's just it's a lot nicer country over there. It's a lot more glassable, but they just don't give out many tags. I think they gave out. Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to look. I don't remember the total number of spring bear tags, but it's just not that many. So yeah, if you want to do it consistent, you kind of have to go to a state like Idaho or Montana, which are great places to go for spring bear. And I think generally their seasons are the same. They're somewhere in that April 15th through June 15th time frame, which is what I had this year. Right out of the gates here, April 15th was still quite a bit of snow in the high country. It was tough to get to some places where you kind of wanted to go. So you're kind of limited there. Most last few years, though, it's been pretty wide open. You can get into these places pretty easy. But we had a huge snowpack this year, so everything was kind of tightened down, and you kind of had to start low and work your way up. But
how many tags got drawn in your area, your unit?
I could tell you that. But
Mm.
if I did, everybody would know what unit I
You'd
was
have to
in.
kill me. No, no, no.
Um, can I just make up a number?
Everybody would know what unit that is. Wow,
Uh,
you hunters are smart, man. You're like detectives. You're all out there trying to figure it
it's not
out.
too hard to figure out, but that would be making it too easy to figure
Mm.
out. So,
Well, in 20 years I've been married to you, I've never known you to go spring bear hunting.
no, it's tough to
So,
get in the state.
yeah.
Tough to get.
Hmm.
Yeah, you have to go to Idaho. So, no, I was real fortunate to get this tag. It's a little bittersweet though because I really love bear hunting, but I love it in the fall. I like that time as well. And, I kind of hunt bears for the meat. Obviously, our whole family loves bear meat here. Um, and the bears that I'm killing in the fall, in that August time frame, the places that I'm getting them, they're just packed full of berries. It's huckleberries, it's blueberries. So they've got a ton of fat on them, and I have never had a bad bear. I have no interest in hunting them around rivers where you got fish or anything like that. There's no skunk cabbages, none of that where I'm chasing these bears. So um, I really like that season. So drawing the spring tag was cool because it opened up kind of a new time frame to get out there and look around, and you get to get up there into the high country and see a ton of deer, a ton of elk. You see a lot of bears. Everything's out in the open, glassable, velvet. The bucks and bulls have dropped, and you're able to find sheds, and yeah, just a great time to be out there. So, but again, if I wouldn't have drawn it, I would have been just still happy as a clam to go get my two bears in the fall. And here in Washington, you're able to get one on the west side, or two on the west side, or one on the west side and one on the east side. So you can get two on the west side, but no matter how you cut it, it's just one on the east
And
side. So
maybe we should explain for people that live in like Missouri and Massachusetts, because I know I've seen these listeners. What does it mean, the east and the west side of
oh,
Washington?
well,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I'm being a little bit
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest specific, but yeah, so Washington is different. It's diverse. It's got the west side of the state, which is really about a third of the state. It's thick. It's dense.
It's a rainforest.
It's a rainforest. It's green. It's got a lot of timber. Whereas you get over to the east side,
East side of the Cascade
east
Mountains.
side of the Cascade Range.
Yeah. Okay.
The 2/3 of the state going east. It's a lot more wide open. You get this arid. You get the desert style. You get everything from acorn trees on the southern end by the Columbia, and then you get that. There's coulees at the northern end and a lot of sagebrush, and then of course the pines and stuff, middle of the state. So it just varies a lot, and it's a lot more enjoyable for me to hunt that east side of the state, eastern half or eastern 2/3, just because it's more glassable. It's easier to traverse and cross country, and it's not as thick. It's not always raining. We got a lot of rain here on this side, and it's thick. You got stinging nettles. You got devil's club. You got thick brush. Yeah, so it's a bugger. But again, we've got great animals on this side, but there's certain places that just aren't that enjoyable to hunt. So
yeah, the Cascades are a really unique mountain range because some of them, huge mountains. Some of the 14,000-foot peaks like Rainier and Baker. I don't know how to high peaks, but it's so dense and rainforest like. It's just so different than like where I grew up in the Rockies or even the east side of Washington, where it's like you said, that arid kind of Rocky Mountain feel, high and dry, whereas and big skies. And over here, it's like big mountains, but such dense.
It's underbrush.
Underbrush and trees are so tall.
It's frustrating. You got a lot of samberberries and stickers and stuff like that. So
it feels very enclosing almost and then you have the water not too far away, so the sound, it's a very different feeling than the big open big skies of Montana where you can actually get above tree line. Here you got to hike quite a ways.
You say that because I grew up here, so when I first went to Montana, I quickly realized why they called it Big Sky, why they kind of nicknamed it that. It's like, holy smokes, you can just see so much more. It just seems like the sky is bigger over there as over here. It's just seems smaller.
Yeah, yeah. It's real pretty here, though. It's that lush green. I love it, but it's easier to see stuff over on the east side and kind of track things. And here, when it's pouring
you can grow
rain
a better
and foggy,
garden on this side. That's for damn
That's
sure.
one reason why we have such a hard time thinking about moving. Is that, oh my gosh, things just grow here like so amazingly.
Yeah. I mean, you get a mild climate all summer long for the most part, and then you have a hot house and you can extend it both sides. So yeah, it's definitely more conducive. Whereas on the east side, it gets so bloody hot. It's hard to not have your certain veggies bolt on you. And just a little bit too hot and a lot shorter of a season. So
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, today you spent the day processing bear meat from this last trip that you were on, and so I think the listeners would probably be really happy to hear a hunting story from you finally.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. High hopes getting in there early and spending a lot of days in the backcountry. It was a wilderness style hunt, and room to roam, and not that many tags given out for the area. So pretty excited to get back there and check out this place. And unfortunately, it's one of those years where work just destroyed my plans. It's just one thing after another kept coming up. So I wasn't able to get in there, and I kind of had a plan not to real early in April anyway, just with the way the snow was. So what I did was kind of plan my trip into May, and figuring there'd be even more bears out, be easier to get into the high country, to access it. And so, first trip in, saw, half a dozen bears or whatever. And there was one bear particular back there that I really wanted to get. He was just a hog. And, you spend all day glassing that time and glassing down. I kind of try to get up and glassed down into those bottoms, that lower third of the mountain, into the alders and into that green. And if there's a burn or anything like that, man, the greenery under there, it's just a chartreuse. It's just practically glowing, and the bears just love it. And so really spend a lot of time glassing burns, and just tend to find bears in there. So that first trip in was I never did end up even stalking any bears. Saw one really good one, and like I said, I really wanted this one that was just huge. But planned on going right back in after that trip, and it just didn't happen. I had, like I said, a lot of work, stuff just piled on, and we had, with the work I do here, we had sturgeon openers and halibut openers, and everything was just kind of keeping me out of the mountains. So time got tight there at the end, came down to the last week of the season, and this last week I went in there, and there's nobody back in there at all. And yeah, spent some days, and it's funny, the first night I bombed over there. Took a while to get there, and that first day in, I had probably 4 hours of daylight, and so I was hustling. I really wanted to get back and get some good glassing in that evening, which is like prime time for that time of year for bears. And shoot, I got in there only about 1.5 miles, and for some reason I kind of stopped, and I don't remember why I stopped, but I turned my head, and then I caught movement, and I looked to the left, and shoot, 20 yards, here comes this big old Tom walking by me. Big old cat. And he had no idea I was there. Just 20 yards, he walked right across the trail I was walking, and he got, I don't know, probably 20 yards past it. And then he kind of figured it out. He looked back at me and eyeballed me for a half a second before he took off. But no, it's pretty cool to see that big old giant cat. There's a ton of cats in this country. They're pretty prevalent. You see tracks in the snow and all that, but you just don't tend to see the darn cats. So that was a pretty cool sighting. But anyway, so I did end up getting in there. I don't know, I probably only got in there 4.5 miles or so, and threw up my camp and glassed that whole evening, and didn't end up seeing anything that night. Saw a lot of deer, a lot of elk, which was cool. Trying to take photos of, deer that looked like they were going to grow pretty good. They were already out, out past the years and just sprouting. So that was a lot of fun. But that night didn't see anything. Woke up to a little bit of rain patter on my tent, and I wasn't expecting that. And sure enough, I got up at 4 and, got my food going and coffee going, and quickly realized that it was just socked in. I couldn't see anywhere. I opened up the tent, and I couldn't see, 50 yards. It was just completely socked in. All right, so yeah, I was up on that top, and I gave it a couple hours hoping that fog would lift. Now I only had, I didn't have that much time, so I didn't want to burn my whole day just hunkered down in my tent. So I was getting a little restless, I'll admit, but it came to a point where it didn't look like it was going anywhere. And the weird thing is, it was windy. It was blowing like crazy. Usually you get wind, it blows that fog right out of there, but it was sucked in. So what I did was I figured, well, I'm either going to have to hike out of here, I'm going to have to hike down, way down, and hopefully I can go out of this fog. So I took a ridge and started bombing down, and went down. I don't know how many feet I dropped down. It was a long ways, but could not get out of that fog. So I figured, well, this mountain, it must be from top to bottom. So hiked back up to the top, broke down my camp, and bebopped out of there, which was disappointing. But I really wanted to get some hunting in on that day. So I hit the truck and bombed down, dropped a bunch of elevation, and I did end up getting out of the fog. So found a spot where I could get out of it, hiked into a new area that I had checked this area out. I'd really picked it apart on some mapping, and it looked like a great spot as well. So I went in there not just totally blind, but it was a spot that I'd kind of had in my head. So got in there and man, just started glassing, and of course I could tell that fog was lifting. It was probably at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it started lifting everywhere. So then I was kind of like, man, I should have stick it out up there, but I started seeing a lot of sign where I was, and let's see, first bear I saw a really nice cinnamon right out of the gates. Saw another one, saw blonde. I mean, the color phase bears in this area, it's phenomenal. You get black, you get blonde, cinnamon, chocolate, everything, and you just never know what you're going to see. So it's pretty awesome. But a lot of blondes. It seems like more blondes than you see in places. And I ended up seeing 2 blondes, one really good blonde and then a smaller blonde on this trip. So that was pretty cool. I'd ever get a shot at another blonde. I've taken one really I mean, it was like bombshell blonde. It was just like highlights. Super cool bear I took a few years back, and just don't see that many. But so I got in there and ended up putting a few miles on, and just like I said, glass and glass and glass. And the bears weren't really moving around too much during the day. It was more of a, kind of a late afternoon type thing where you'd really start seeing them. Otherwise, they would kind of hunker down in those burns and in the bottoms and in the alders, and you glass, glass, glass. You never know with bears; they're unpredictable, so you never really know when you're gonna have one move across a draw or running ridges. This time of year they're rutting, so those big old boars will travel, but I wasn't seeing a whole lot during the day, so I just kept covering country and glassing a whole lot of new stuff, and a lot of alder patches and the edges of alders, and down that lower third still where it was nice and green. It's really where I was seeing most of the sign. I wasn't seeing it on the ridges, so anyway, that night I ended up seeing a really nice big blonde. It was just a beautiful bear, and so I really wanted to kind of spend some time there. So that night I'd camped up on the ridge, and after I'd glassed that bear up, he was right in the bottom, and I got down in there, and I did not have enough time. He kind of disappeared on me. It got dark, and so I bombed out, went back up, camped, figured I'm gonna spend the whole day down there trying to find that blonde bear. And so that's kind of what I did. I got out early and got down in there. Of course, it was morning. Nothing's really moving at all. Never saw anything for most of that day. And it wasn't till I don't know, 4 o'clock or so, and I had a that was pretty decent. It's kind of a darker cinnamon, almost chocolate. It's hard to tell. It's kind of been some dark timber, but darker bear, and he came through, and he was pretty decent. But I really had my heart set on that big old blonde just because he was a good sized bear. But so I pretty much stuck it out. It was a pretty boring day. I stuck it out on that spot for the entire time, and sure enough, that evening I saw where that blonde had gone in to a spot, just kind of moved through a patch down in there, and I only saw him for a few seconds, and so I knew he was there, and so I was just parked on it. I saw 2 bears down there. I saw cinnamon as well. And so I sat on that spot for what I did is actually I moved down towards that bottom and got really close, got within probably 100 yards. But, I was in a spot where the wind wasn't going to get me, and just wanted to get as close as I could. That wasn't going to screw up the hunt or have any chance of blowing them out. But got down in there, and sure enough, I spent a ton of time. And it's not like you can take a nap when a bear's in some alders, because those bears, they move, and they'll move fast. All of a sudden, they could come out, and I could miss him, and he could just kind of move out on me and I'd never see him. So I did not want to take a nap. Just one of those deals is just keep glassing, all the areas you can and stay focused on that spot. And sure enough, he ended up coming, or the blonde didn't come out, but the cinnamon did. And so I ended up taking that cinnamon, and it was a dandy. But I ended up shooting him at 30 yards. He was he came out of that at 100 and walked right at me and walked right. In fact, he walked right by me. And it's funny because early on in the season, I was going with the bow, and I really wanted to get him with the bow. But then when it came down to the end, I ended up breaking out the boomstick and went with the rifle. Just really wanting to fill that tag. And the country I was in was not really conducive to bow hunting. It was really tough spot and stock and real steep, a lot of rocks, just not that great for that. And the bears in there's little patches amongst the alders, and you'll see them kind of move through those. And so getting a stalk in those alders is really hard unless they come out of them and they get up on the hillside or something. So I went in with the rifle, and I'll be danged if that bear didn't come right at me and he walked within 30 yards, and I could have totally stuck him with my bow. But I was happy to get him, and I dumped him right there. He didn't go but 10 feet. So that was pretty cool. I was really happy. Got up to him, and he was just a really nice big old boar, cinnamon colored bear. And so, I was way down in a hole, and took a few photos and started breaking him down. And I worked well into the night on that one. It was super heavy pack out. Ended up getting that bear back up to camp that night. I don't know what time it was. It must have been probably midnight or so. Bombed out of there super early next morning. So it worked out really well. It was a lot of fun, and so happy to get that bear. And like I said, we spent the whole day cutting him up, and made some burger, and made quite a few little steaks and roast, made some nuggets, actually rendered down some of the fat. And I've got a ton of fat already rendered in jars, but I wanted some fresh stuff, and I wanted to make some nuggets for the girls. So I ended up rendering down some of the fat off of this thing, and cutting up some small pieces and just making bear nuggets, and it was awesome. Paley's one of her favorites, so she loves that. But then we made some bear burgers, and which is what I had promised her. It's funny, when I left for this trip, it was the second trip over, and she was really bummed out on my first one. I didn't get a bear, so she said, basically, Daddy, we got to have bear burgers when you get back. You need to get one. So it was a lot of pressure, and got a lot of meat off of it. Holy smokes! I spent the whole day just cutting, trimming the fat, getting every little piece of fascia and fat off of them, and ground it up real nice and packaged it up. Got all the steaks all perfect, and got some roast, and it's gonna be, I didn't weigh it, but it's a pile of meat. So I'm just really super happy about it, and pulled the claws off of this sucker and got those for Paley. Another thing that she really wanted was some more bear claws. So that all worked out really well. But so that was basically my spring bear hunt.
So besides the bear that you brought home, I noticed you brought some mushrooms and some fiddleheads home too.
Yeah, I did. Somewhere in there. I went out foraging. I think actually I missed a day in there. I think, there was one day that I was actually, I saw a couple more bears. Went down this other ridge, but I got into this dark timber, and boy, found actually right on the edge of some dark timber and some alders, and started finding a whole pile of morels. And boy, up there where the snow had just kind of went away, all the fiddleheads were fresh. You get those bracken fiddlehead ferns, and of course down here in the lowlands, those things have all fully matured. they're not worth picking at this point. But up there, it's so late. Yeah, I picked a bunch of those fiddlehead ferns and got a bunch of morels and of course, pretty much at all times, every time I kind of hit a spot to glass on those ridges, I was digging up with my hiking sticks, with my trekking poles. I was digging up onions, those wild onions. Those things are delicious.
You never bring any wild onions home, I
That's
notice.
because I eat them. I just
What
can't.
are they taste like an onion?
Yeah.
Are they super
Yeah, they're good.
strong like an onion?
Yeah, they're tiny, so you got to eat, a handful of them. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many onions I eat, but you find yourself just sitting up there, and then you kind of look around, and you got a couple thousand onions around you, so you just start rooting them up and kind of pass the time and wipe the dirt off and eat them up. It's pretty good. It's kind of like picking berries, but you're rooting around in the ground. And
I get a lot of pictures, or I see on Instagram pictures of wild onions being eaten, and I'm like,
I love them.
he
They're
never
so good.
brings wild onions home.
I think I could have filled my exo pack with wild onions and probably just packed that out of the mountains.
Yeah, next time.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, actually, you think about it, I could have, I pickle a lot of onions here. Those little tiny, they're not even a dime size. The bigger ones are about dime size. That would be pretty good. Just packing a pile of those out and pickling them up. But no, I never bring them out. I just eat them. Yeah, my breath just smells like onion back
That's
there.
good for your immune system while you're back there.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff you can eat up there. It's pretty cool. But yeah, it's still a lot of morels and yeah, like I said, the fiddleheads and then the onions. So
yeah, you've done quite a bit of morel hunting this spring, actually, and I put a section on the website under healing foods. I put a morel section on there because you brought home a couple of huge bags of morels. Where were you at when you did that? You were
I don't
hiking,
know.
scouting,
This year I've just
were
been
you
finding them
scouting?
all over the place.
And you brought home huge bags of them, and so we took a bunch of pictures, and I put
Yeah.
them on the website. I haven't put a recipe on yet, though. I probably should do that. But morels are pretty much like you just clean them and then saute them, and we saute them in a butter. Cook them
Yep.
really well because
That
you'll get
Kerrygold
sick if you
grass-fed
don't
butter,
cook them.
and that's about it. It's real
Yeah,
easy.
and salt.
Yep.
And that is like, those things are so good.
Yeah.
They're,
And with bear meat, they're even
yeah,
better. It's just
yeah.
awesome combo.
We had that tonight.
Yep.
We had that tonight we made some bear meat tacos with morels that you brought home.
Yeah, it was a great morel season. It was really good, and with them, we start finding them back in April. First part of April at down in the lowlands. We find them around here in the cottonwoods, and then as it gets later in the season, you just kind of have to move up the mountain and move up the mountain. And right now they're up there. I don't know what the elevation is, but shoot, I'll find them into July, way up in the high country scouting, and yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty good time range that you can find those morels from down in the lowlands to up in the high country. So yeah, got to be one of the favorite mushrooms out there. I found some coral mushrooms and on this trip as well, and the springtime you don't find as many. Morels are kind of the number one. A lot more of the corals and chanterelles are a big one for us in the fall. Elk season is just like prime time for mushroom hunting. You find a lot of chanterelles. You get a lot of the cauliflowers. You get chicken of the woods, hen of the woods, a lot of different corals and matsutakis, and it's a pretty awesome time in the fall, early fall, to be out there mushroom hunting and chasing bulls. But yeah, this time of year you don't find as many edibles as you do in the fall.
I think the morels too are better if you can get a big enough stash of them. I think they're better for dehydrating. than the chanterelles.
Yeah.
They seem to rehydrate better, and just the chanterelles.
Chanterelles are all water. So
Yeah, they just don't
when you
rehydrate as well.
dehydrate them, they lose, it seems like 90% of their size, if not more. And they just don't rehydrate very well. They're never, they're just kind of spongy when you rehydrate them. They're chewy. They're not that fresh taste. So morels rehydrate really well. Also, cauliflower mushrooms, which we get a lot of around here, those things rehydrate really well as well. They're just, and they're so delicious. Um, yeah. When I find a cauliflower, I'm pretty happy. We still have some dehydrated here, I think.
Chanterelles.
No, the
Cauliflower.
cauliflower ones.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do. Yeah, I put them in soups and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think one of the other questions we see a lot, and we get a lot, is on the topic of bear hunting. Kind of back to that, is the whole concept of cooking it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and what's the best way to cook it, and how well should we cook it? And I know you and I today were looking online at recipes, because we do that quite a bit. And you were just like, man, people cannot trust what's on the internet. And you were reading me some comments that people were saying about how they cook their bear burgers medium rare and all this stuff.
Yeah,
and so
it's pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, you see all sides when you get online. It is not the best place for information. I think talking to somebody, some old timer, or somebody who's done it a lot is a much better way for information than online. Because then I got interested. I started seeing some completely contradicting opinions on cooking bear, which I never thought there was anybody that would actually say to cook it medium rare. Because maybe not everybody knows this, but trichinosis is very worrisome when you're eating bear. So, I mean, it's really easy. You just cook it well done, and make sure that meat gets up to about 160 degrees, and you're completely safe. You've killed the trick. But if you cook it rare, medium rare, you are setting yourself up for some bad stuff to happen in about 2.5 weeks. I would never want to risk eating a bear that may have trichinosis. Now, sure, not all of them do, but it's a pretty awful thing to get, and once you have it, you've always got it. You can kick it, but I know the muscle fatigue and the abdominal pain and all the things that go along with trichinosis are not something I ever want to deal with. So pretty easy. Cook your bear all the way through. Make sure it gets up to 160 degrees, and make sure you don't. I think you're supposed to. Even after you've cooked it to 160, wait a few minutes so it kills those little buggers. But just don't take any chances. Some folks do, and it boggles my mind that they actually will do that. Similar with mushrooms, some people will eat like a false morel, and they'll just take that risk that they're not going to get sick from it. I don't want to take those kind of chances. So, yeah, cook your bear, cook it all the way, and you won't have to worry about trichinosis. So,
and if you don't know what trichinosis is, I think there's some people don't actually understand what it is, but it's a parasite. Kind of acute thing. It'll give you like the abdominal pain and the diarrhea and all that. But then about a week later, you'll start to have muscle pain, joint pain, and you can also see like a rash. You get a rash all over your body. And that is because the parasite has actually gone from your GI tract into your muscles.
Yeah, it gets
it's like
into your muscles.
Into your muscle tissue.
And I think it takes about a couple weeks, 2.5 to 3 weeks before it really gets into your body and you're really starting to feel it.
Yeah. And so then you have to take anti-parasitic drugs, which are, aren't that great to take either. They can give you this vomiting and diarrhea and all that, but you know, your body's trying to get rid of its parasites. And honestly, I think, yeah, like you said, some of the hardest infections to get rid of or to calm down are parasitic infections. And so, you know, it's just not even worth it not cooking your meat.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, and
Well, the
but
thing about it is, it's when it comes to bear is kind of greasy. It's kind of it. You can't. I don't know. I guess you could probably overcook it, but you can't in a way. Because what I like to do with it, you know, if you're not making burgers, which you know, it's pretty easy to cook a burger all the way through, and it's not. It doesn't. You don't lose anything, um, especially if you've added some fat to it. But what I like to do is I like to toss a roast in the and bake it 500 degrees. Let that thing just kind of sear the edges of it, and then you know, shut the oven off and just let it sit there for a few hours, and it completely cooks it through. Um, and You have no issues. It totally cooks it through, and the meat's not tough. It's still really, really tender,
mm-hmm.
and that's always been my favorite way to cook bear. And then you could slice that off, and it's just awesome. It's juicy, and it's you know, there's no pink. Obviously, it's cooked all the way through. It's really good. But
Yeah, I will say that bear, like a lot of people, you know, I think for bear hunters out there, you're used to this reaction from the rest of the population. And it's like, what? You eat bear? You know, it is so funny. I remember, was it a Joe Rogan podcast, or he was on a Gritty podcast, I think, talking about how he posted pictures of like a fish, and then he posted pictures of a dead fish, and then he posted pictures of,
yeah, people get weirded out
and
by
then
bears.
he posted a picture of bear meat or whatever, and people just like lost their minds. And I always was kind of the same way, because you didn't really start bear hunting till about 10 years ago. I don't feel like
Well,
you were not.
not so into it. Yeah, I probably
Yeah,
the last 10 years is when I've really, really dialed it to where I
yeah,
want to make sure I get those two bears every year.
yeah.
It's not
And
just see one and take it. It's I'm going for them.
okay, so when I was pregnant with Paley, our first daughter, I don't know, I think I was like 7 months pregnant, and I was having I had a lot of early contractions. So I was one of those Braxton Hicks contractions where you think you're having contractions, but very different than labor contractions. So when you've never been pregnant before, you don't know what they are. They're really weird.
Yeah, I don't know what
And
they
I
are.
used to have no, you wouldn't. Oh, you're so lucky. Um, so I used to have a practice in Montana, and I was going to Montana every 6 weeks or 8 weeks, right? And I was working. I was pregnant, pretty pregnant by then. I was like 7.5 months. And my my mother's friend threw a baby shower for me. Remember this story?
Mm-hmm.
And uh, it was beautiful. She has a beautiful house in the mountain, and she had these really big bird feeders out there, and the bears used to come, and they would eat around the bottom of these bird feeders. And so it was a really nice day. And let's see, when did I have her? January. It was like October or something, the end of October. And these bears came, and the mama bear came with her cubs, and they were just sunning themselves literally like right on the back porch. So everybody there, and again, if you know my history with hunting, you know, it was very difficult, and like just because of a lot of the ways in which I was raised, let's say. So these bears were there, and everybody kept saying, "Oh, it's such a good sign. It's wonderful. These bears are here at your baby shower, and it's magical." And of course, I still do believe that. I mean, if I was sitting here on my back porch and a bear and a mama bear and two cubs walked into my backyard, now I might definitely be alarmed, but I would also be like, "Wow, that's a really special moment," you know? And I think that it's like, wow, that's really cool. So the very same day I got on a flight home, and I started not feeling very good. And I got home and I was not feeling very good. And I think it was a day or two later, my caretaker advised that I go to the hospital and get some checkups because I'm having a lot of these contractions. And as we're driving to the not to the airport, as we're driving to the midwives, it's about an hour drive from our house. We're just driving, and this is kind of how Ryan was. He's like, "Oh yeah, so I got Paley a bear rug," and I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I got her a bear rug." What does that mean? You got her a bear rug? And remember, I'm not feeling very good. I've kind of nauseous, which with that baby, I was on medication, so I would keep food down. So I was nauseous and pain and worried and scared that something was wrong. And he's just casually drops that he got a bear rug
Well, it
for
was
the
a
baby.
beautiful cinnamon colored,
Yeah, it's
really
this
nice
little
long-haired cinnamon
rug,
bear.
and so I'm just
A
so like,
perfect
huh?
rug to lay a baby on and
So I was like, huh?
totally comfortable.
And then I said, what does that mean? He's like, well, I killed a bear. And I just went into this massive, like, hormonal rage. And, you know, obviously, any of you out there who have been married to a woman who's had a baby, or you're a woman who's having a baby, you know, your hormones are crazy. And I just literally 2 days before I had this magical experience with these bears sunning themselves at my baby shower. And here's my husband telling me that he shot and killed a bear for the baby. And I just went into this hormonal rage. And I was like, it's your fault that this is happening. You are the reason I'm having these contractions. If I lose this baby, it's your fault. I mean, I just went off on you. Remember that?
Yeah,
In the
crazy,
car.
though.
And he was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, there were bears at my baby shower on the thing. Now you killed them. You killed the bear. And he's like, I didn't kill that bear. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. You killed a bear. And that's why I'm having this. And I was so mad. I wouldn't even talk to him. I was sobbing, crying. Got to the midwives, and I got to the hospital and spent a couple hours there. And he just didn't really say anything after that. He was like, all right, well, that was not a good time to tell her about the bear. And then I think we got that bear rug, I think when Paley was 2 or 1. She was walking around, like, because we got pictures of her on the couch with it and stuff, but she was walking around in a diaper, so she was older than 1.
Yeah, the
but we
reason
actually got it back.
Yeah, I got that one rugged because it was such a cool hide. So
Yeah,
nice long hair on it. It
yeah.
was great.
But I guess the point to my story is kind of
Well, usually I don't get them like rugged because I'm too cheap.
well,
Because it's so expensive to get them rugged, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of going for the meat. I do take the skulls out and the claws, but not a real big
Yeah.
rug guy because of the cost. So
But
once
to
you
get
have a couple,
back,
it's
right.
like it's plenty.
To get back to my point, it was like this. I think the reaction that a lot of the population has around bears and the whole idea of hunting bears and eating their meat, and I think the emotional reaction to hunting a bear correlates to a lot of people that their meat isn't edible or something,
Right.
or like you shouldn't eat their
Well-
meat. And what I found, since you've been bringing bear home, and I'll be honest, elk is my favorite by far. I love elk, but if you want a fattier meat that's excellent in soups and like for like burritos like we had tonight, you know, bear is it. I mean, it's got a lot more flavor. And now I'm used to fall bear because Ryan, actually, this bear we ate tonight was really good. I didn't feel like it tasted
That was
any
great.
worse. So, I will admit now that bear is actually one of my more favorite meats to eat, and I love making soups with it. It makes a really yummy broth. A bear does, but yeah, I think, and I've noticed that too. You know, there's
bears
that
are.
emotional
Let's face
reaction
it. I
to
mean,
bears.
bears are pretty fun to look at. You just never know what bears are going to do. So yeah, I find myself. I love watching bears. I love just seeing what they do, because they do weird stuff. They're just, a blast to watch. But yeah, some people, that's the line, right? They'll be okay with hunting. They'll be okay with, maybe deer, and elk, but they'll draw the line at the bear.
And
that's fine.
it's interesting. What is that emotional difference between like an elk dying and a bear dying? Is it the way they look? Do you think it's the way they look? That they look.
I think they're cute.
They're cute.
I think
that
a lot
they
of
have
people
more of
think
that.
they're. Yeah, what is it? I've heard
And then
somebody
I think
try
of
to
that.
explain it as far as their, like growing up with cartoons, Smokey the Bear. What's the other one? What's the one that everybody?
I think of the Jungle Book when
The
I
Jungle
think of
Book.
bears.
Yeah. Which one? What's his name?
His name is. I should know this. I've only had to watch it like 1,000 times, and
Actually haven't seen it in a couple years. So
Jungle Book. Oh, we just watched the new one recently that came out
yeah, I can't
with
remember.
Mowgli and Babaloo. But oh my gosh, this is
something like
horrible
that.
parenting. We don't know the bear's name.
Teddy bears. I don't know what it is, but they're cute and they're cuddly. Teddy
I
bears.
also think that
People grow up thinking that they're.
people correlate a bear to a female energy, because when we see a bears a lot, we think of a mama bear with their cubs. And I think there's also that emotional
Really?
symbolism that we put with bears, like we call it mama bear, right? Like you're being a mama bear. A mama bear is kind of like you're being protective, and we use that synonym to do that. So when I think of bears, now, if I'm thinking of a grizzly, so when I think of grizzlies, I think of that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio with that guy in the Bridgers that got mutilated by
The
a bear.
Revenant.
Holy cow! And that crawled like miles to survive.
So when you think
or
of black
something.
bears, you're thinking
When I think
female,
of a black
but when you think
bear,
of
I
grizzly,
think
you're
of,
thinking of a male.
Yeah. So when I think of a black bear, I think of a cuddly. I think of a mama bear and her cubs and cute little cubs, and I don't think of like a violent bear. So the whole idea that you're going to kill this mama bear who's just protecting her young children is like weird to me. But I think that's what people think of when they think of a black bear, because they don't. And now, if you say a grizzly bear,
I think that's what you think of. I don't think
well,
most people think that they're like a female
remember,
energy.
I thought for many years like the majority of the population. I'm just telling you what I would correlate a black bear to. Now, I think if you say a grizzly bear to somebody,
I've heard Ranella and other folks. I don't think Ranella came up with it, but somebody else did. But charismatic megafauna. They're charismatic.
Yeah, they have
they
a
have
personality. Like this mama bear is literally like with those bears sunning themselves on the porch at my baby shower.
Mm-hmm.
Like that bear looked like she's gonna like stand up and be like, "Hey, congratulations!" I mean, that's how we're looking on them like that. And so to me, when I think of a black bear, I think of that. I don't think of the male boar. I don't think of them as warring animals that are killing each other and males fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I think of a grizzly, I think of that because I grew up by Yellowstone Park, and there were a lot of grizzly attacks, grizzly deaths. It was always like a grizzly that was attacking people in their tents. I think of Alaskan bears. Aren't those grizzlies up there?
Yeah.
Okay. I think of Alaska. That's like, I think of grizzlies. I don't think of like sweet little mama bears, but a black bear is different. And
yet black bears probably hurt more people than any. Maybe that's because there's more of them, but black bears do attack quite a bit. Now a lot of that is mama bear protecting the babies. It seems like circumstances happen where guys get in between the two, and that's where a lot of the attacks, but sometimes not. Sometimes black bears are just, like I said, they're one of those critters that are so unpredictable. You never know what they're going to do when you're watching them.
Now, when you're hunting, sorry for all you bear hunters out there, I'm asking questions related to when you're hunting them, are you like when we talked with Dave Baronio, he obviously has a great love for bears and he bear hunts. And he was talking about, the boars and the older males. And are you always killing males when you shoot them, or
Yeah,
are you
you
are
don't
you
have to.
killing women? Are you women? See, there I go again. That like
No,
that
so
emotional thing. Do you kill females too?
you can. Yeah, you're not limited to boars only. Now, bears are hard to identify. Um, bears are hard to judge the size of, and they're hard to identify the sex a lot of times, unless you watch them for a little bit. There's some that kind of stand out. You kind of watch how they walk. You watch how their backside is, how it slopes, and their muzzle, and you look at the ears, and you look at all these things, and it's not that easy to judge sometimes. Now then, there's bears that immediately you see them and you're like, oh wow, that's a big bear. But when you're looking at them through binoculars at 200, 300, 400, 500 yards, man, a lot of guys get fooled. All of us get fooled. When you first throw your binoculars up and you're looking, you're like, man, that looks like a big old bear. And then you really start looking, and it might not be a big bear at all. It could just be a little butterball. It could be a 1.5-year-old bear. And then you'll kind of notice the mannerisms, how quick they move. And big bears move slowly. They've kind of got a certain walk to them, a certain pace. But I've been fooled before, and trying to judge a boar versus a sow, yeah, it's difficult. That's why you tend to spend a lot of time watching them and looking at them.
Can you tell when they're pregnant?
Pregnant? No. No, you
So
can't.
are they only pregnant in
I've
hibernation?
never been out in the woods and saw a bear and said, whoa, that's a prego mama right there. No,
Are they in hibernation when they're pregnant
they are.
and having babies? So there's no chance of shooting a pregnant sow?
Yeah, you could. I mean, they breed right now in June. The latter half of May and into June there. So, now is when the rut is going on, and then it's the rest of the year, yeah, they're pregnant, and then come November they're starting to hibernate. So, but then they have those babies while they tend to be all hunkered down in some hole somewhere or in some tree hollow somewhere. So, but no, I have never seen a big old fat mama bear walking across and say, wow, she's ready to pop.
Well, I also think it was a great point when we talked with Dave. I learned a lot from Dave about bears that obviously I know nothing about this topic, even though I seem to be highly emotional about it. And the whole aspect of hunting with hounds and hunting with bait.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions out there when it comes to that. It's such an emotional response to do what our state did, and that was just to ban it. Once it came up, and they're like, well, you're cheating, you're baiting. When in reality, what that allows you to do is, what we want to do as hunters, as conservationists, is take out those older age class boars. They may be a non-breeding boar. They may be an old boar that, that they'll go out and they'll kill a lot of the cubs. The new recruited cubs that are coming up, and they'll kill those and they'll eat them, just to get that sow to go back into season. And that's one of the things that they do. Well, as hunters, kind of what we do is look for that biggest animal, the oldest age class boar. Bears live a long time. Well, one way to do that is through baiting. You get them close, you're able to see that bear at 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards, and you're able to ID him, see exactly how big he is, how old he is, what he is, sour boar. And that's probably the best way to identify what you're going to shoot. Whereas when you're not allowed that, and like for a fall season where you tend to see bears at a distance, guys will see one and they'll just think he's huge, and he's not. And it could have been a cub, Could have been a smaller 1.5-year-old bear that they shoot. Whereas if they would have been allowed to bait them or even use hounds and, put them up a tree, then you can tell and you can get up on that bear and really judge him and say, okay, that's a little bit too small. Let's let that guy go. Let's keep running and go find ourselves, a bigger bear or an older age class bear. And that's kind of the same thing with the baiting. So I would prefer we could do it. Now, that's not to say I would do it, but it makes sense as far as conservation-wise, what you're trying to take out of the population and what gets taken out as it stands right now. A lot of those older age class boars don't get shot because guys will tend to shoot the first one they see, and or they just misjudged it, misjudged the size, which happens all the time. Whereas that would not have happened if they would have been able to see it, 30, 40 yards away. And the unfortunate part is, and I've talked about this before, is, sure, with the politics of our state, they took those things away. But what they had to do is hire hound hunters to go run hounds all over the place. Just out here behind our place, they set quotas for these guys to come in, hired houndsmen to come in and shoot bears. So they're still getting hound hunted, but not by the public. The public is paying for Fish and Wildlife to pay guys to go hunt these bears. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make any sense at all. Still getting hunted the same way. And the way when they came out and they voted on it here in the state, it was, they called it barbaric and inhumane and all this kind of thing. They took that away, and yet it's still getting done. That's the only effective way to do it. All the tree farms you got around here, the bears destroy a lot of the trees, so the state hires trappers or hires houndsmen to go in, and they're still hounding them, but the public doesn't have access to do it that way. Only they do, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. They just try to hide that from the public, I guess, in a way, because they get so emotional about it. But again, it got labeled as barbaric, inhumane, and all that, but that's just a complete emotional response. That's kind of how the political party flows around our state. They tend to win those arguments here with the folks that we have around Seattle. So,
yeah, interesting topic. It's always an interesting topic too to
yeah,
read.
bears are weird. I mean,
read Instagram.
Like I said, I love
comments on
watching bears. I love looking at bears. They're one of the coolest critters. But there's also a need to thin them out. They do take out a lot of fawns, elk calves in the springtime when they're dropping. So there's definitely need for it, and I absolutely love the meat. So it works. We taking 2 bears. If I was to miss, opportunity to be able to deer hunt, and I could just get those bears and get that meat in my freezer, I would be completely content with that. I like the meat that much. So
bears are really cute, but then again, I think of that poor guy that got eaten in his tent by all those bears that were really cute that he loved.
Well, that guy was an idiot.
Well, you know what I'm saying, like
Timothy Treadwell.
I think that is when we talk about the conception. That is where people go, and they believe that these animals are. And I could be one of those. I could get out there and say that I believe that animals, I mean, you watch them, you go to the mountains. There's a reason you hunt these animals. There's something magical about animals, the way they live, how harsh is it to be an animal? If you're surviving and you're living past a year, whether you're a bear or a cougar or an elk or anything,
they're way tougher than we are.
You're a survivor, and they make it through winters, they make it through droughts, they make it through low food. some of them don't, and it's
Well,
a
it's incredible
harsh.
just what bears, look at what a bear does. I mean, they
Oh my
hibernate for all
gosh.
those months, and they come out and they've still got fat on them. It's amazing what their bodies will do to shut down
Hmm.
for that amount of time. And just, yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
I mean, animals are definitely magical in a sense that I think there's a longing in humans of something about that, about being wild like that, but they are wild, and their brains are not like ours, you know. They don't have cerebral cortexes like ours to make choices like, should I love this guy or should I eat this guy? You know, it's all it's instinctual reactions and stuff, and you are just part of the food chain and part of that, just like they are. And so, you know, I think remembering that when we get caught up in the emotional thing of them is, you know, they are wild.
yeah.
And until the Smokey the Bear comes out and says something to me,
Who is it? It's
I
Winnie the
grew up by
Pooh that I was thinking.
Yellowstone Park, so I mean, come on, Smokey the Bear was like a piece of my childhood. We went to Yellowstone Park every single summer. We camped on Yellowstone Lake. You know, we've been to Yellowstone multiple times a year. We go. Smokey the Bear is like, you know, that's what you see. And so,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, but the bear meat is good, and I'll put a recipe on the website. And anything else, babe?
I don't know. I'm dragging.
Dude, we're
I'm so
tired.
tired. I think I
Can you
probably just
tell we're talking on
babbled
and
through
on?
this because, yeah, I can hardly keep my eyes open. Um,
Okay, well, we will be back with, we got some cool guests coming up in the next couple weeks and some fun stuff coming up for the summer. So stay tuned, and we appreciate all you listeners out there and all you new subscribers. And if you get a chance and you know you have an extra 30 seconds in your day, leave us a review on iTunes. That helps us out a lot. Just, you know, tell us how you feel, but 5 stars would be awesome. Okay. Good job, babe. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, folks. Thanks for listening to the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Visit our website at huntharvesthealth.com for more podcast stories and recipes. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Hunt Harvest Health. You can also message me at StHealthy Hunter, that's STH, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Also tag your photos Hunt Harvest Health or Get Stealthy, as we enjoy seeing what you guys are doing as well.